Welcome back to another weekly roundup of cloud gaming news brought to you by yours truly. Remember, if you want to stay up to date with all the latest in cloud gaming, be sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications, and if you enjoy the content, be sure to give the video a like. You guys have been doing that a lot recently, and it really does help out the channel. And also, if you want to continue the conversation after this video is over, I mentioned last week there is a brand new Discord server for this channel. I'll leave a link to it in the description down below. Come join us. But for now, let's jump into the news. First up, an update to a story we covered last week around the potential of Steam creating their own cloud gaming platform after a data miner uncovered some code referencing Steam Cloud Play. Well, this week we know that to be true, kind of, maybe. Following that news story last week, Nathaniel Blue from Steam did give an interview. He stated a few things in that, so I'm literally just going to read some of the key parts. At this time, the Steam Cloud Play beta only supports NVIDIA GeForce Now. On Wednesday, we updated our documentation and sent emails to a small group of developers with details on how to opt into the program. We are working with NVIDIA to make the experience as smooth as possible for players and developers. We are always testing additional ways for customers to play the games in their Steam library. To that end, this is something of a pilot for cloud-based gaming via Steam. Although we have no further announcements at this time, we are open to adding additional Steam Cloud partners over time.
Whoop-de-doo! What does it all mean, Basil?
So with that said, let's break down a couple of things my boy Nathaniel was talking about. So firstly, he's saying this new feature will integrate your Steam library into services like GeForce Now. Obviously, they've stated for now, GeForce Now is the test candidate, but they're open to working with other cloud gaming platforms in the future. This feature should also help developers make more of their games available for cloud streaming. That is, of course, if they're happy for it to be included in the program. And from that communication they've had with a small group of developers, like they stated, and the documentation that's been made available to them, it does hint within that documentation at the future possibility of servers being hosted by Valve. So what we've learned from this is, yes, Steam Cloud Gaming could potentially be a thing, just not anytime soon. For the moment, the integration of this feature should hopefully help services, specifically GeForce Now, that's who they're working with for the moment. And at the end of the day, any feature that helps more games come to a platform like that ultimately benefits us, the players. And finally, on that note of Steam being open to working with other cloud gaming platform providers other than GeForce Now, to us as gamers, it sounds great having our Steam library available on multiple services. In reality, probably goes against the business model of most of these other providers. Taking Stadia as an example, they've built their entire platform around this store, which they have full control over the content and the pricing. I don't see a world where they would be happy for you to go off and buy your game separately from the Steam store and then just utilize their service to play it. It doesn't really benefit them financially. That's what Google's all about.
Hello, I like money.
Not to mention the work that would be required to get Steam games to properly run on the Stadia platform. We won't get into that. And finally, while we're loosely on the note of GeForce Now, obviously last week we talked about the shift to the opt-in model for developers and how that could impact the available games available on GeForce Now. It's just a follow-up note to say, obviously that deadline for developers to choose whether to opt their games in or out has now passed. So again, same as I did last week, I'll leave a link in the description down below to that games list to show what is officially available and what is gone, because as I said, that deadline has now passed, so that list is now very official. Next, we have a very weird one. I've been looking forward to this. We've had a discussion about it on the Discord server this week. Again, if you haven't already joined, link in the description down below. According to a Japanese news source, which I am unable to validate because it looks like this, but apparently this states Sega are working on their own cloud gaming platform dubbed Fog Gaming. Fog is a different type of cloud. It's clever, I like it. Okay, that alone doesn't sound too strange. We've talked in the past about companies and publishers launching their own cloud gaming platforms. Here's where it gets weird. Apparently the article goes on to confirm Sega will use arcades in Japan as the technical backbone. CPUs and GPUs housed in the arcade machines are mentioned specifically. Ultra low latency is touted. Commercial idea is to use arcades outside of business hours.
Meow?
So that is actually all we know at the moment. It's unclear at this point if Sega intend for the service to be used to stream classic arcade games, which would make more sense to me based on the available hardware in Japanese arcade machines. But even with that, I don't know how you get a Japanese arcade machine to act as a server for a You figure it out, Sega. I don't know. And of course, if that is a plan, with arcade gaming being less popular in the West, it's unclear if fog gaming would ever make its way to North America and Europe. But I'll tell you what, between this and the Game Gear Micro this week, like, you okay, Sega? You want acid? Somebody give you acid. Next in Stadia news, it looks like one of the big features which they talked about at the service's unveiling last year, but then we never got, may finally be coming. So some of the things they talked about last year, we had Google Assistant helping you out in-game, or the ability to stream Stadia games directly to YouTube. But looks like what we're getting is state share. For those who can't remember when they talked about this feature last year, and who could blame you, 2020's been a wild ride, this would essentially let a player set up a certain scenario within a game, save that state to a URL, which they would then be able to share, and assuming the recipient owns that game, accessing the link would take them directly into the game and into the same saved state as the person who created it. One of the examples that was given at GDC was a content creator setting up a challenge within a game and then sharing that link for their followers to attempt. So this week we've had confirmation that Stadia plan to implement this feature alongside the launch of Crayta, the world-building game exclusive to Google Stadia. This pairing definitely makes sense to me, essentially for a game which is all about creativity and world-building. It would be easier for you to share your creations with others, or even share a link to invite them into your game. But for the moment, in terms of when we could actually get to use this, both State Share and Crayta are planned for a summer 2020 release.
When people do this, I don't really know what that means.
So while on the topic of upcoming Google Stadia features, this week one of my favorite sites, 9to5Google, did an SDK breakdown in which they found reference to a couple of things which could be in the works. Firstly, the Stadia application available for mobile devices is currently restricted to Google Pixel devices, as well as Asus, OnePlus, Razer, and some Samsung phones. I'll leave a link in the description down below to that full list of supported devices. But one of the first things 9to5Google came across was a mention of uncertified phones. This seems to reference an option for a user to access the Stadia application on a phone which isn't officially supported, but at the detriment to the performance of the service. Next, I found a reference to a line stating "Try Touch Gamepad." So seemingly if you're launching a supported game without an actual controller connected, it would offer you the ability to use touch controls on screen. Very cool. And finally, if you play a lot of multiplayer games on Stadia using an Android device, you'll note if you go to your friends list, there's just a lonely message saying parties coming to app soon. So last discovery by 9to5Google, a couple of mentions of voice chat and invites to parties, so you don't have to feel so isolated.
What do you mean isolated?
On to some quick bits. Last week we talked about some of the free games available for June for services like the Epic Games Store, Xbox Game Pass, and Stadia. It seems like some services like to wait to June to announce these, weird. But here are some follow-up announcements. Firstly, we have PlayStation Now. So if you're a subscriber to PlayStation Now, you'll be able to access Metro Exodus, Dishonored 2, and NASCAR Heat 4. Next, if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, which means you have Twitch Prime, through Twitch for PC only, you'll be able to download Observer, Project Warlock, Dream Daddy, a dad dating simulator. Right, let's wrap this video up. I've got a game to play. The Flame in the Flood, Forsaken Remastered, Max, The Curse of Brotherhood, and Still Rats. And finally, as always, let's finish up on some quick Shadow news. So last week we talked about the Shadow iOS beta application getting support for keyboards, with mouse support in the works. But it turns out the Shadow community was very vocal about their excitement for these two features, so last week they've officially deployed both mouse and keyboard support into the iOS beta application. So these are available to download from TestFlight. And lastly, we touched on this before, but with the official release of Valorant this week, it's become a hot topic again. So for those of you who are unaware, you are currently unable to access Valorant through Shadow because of the anti-cheat Vanguard system used by Valorant, which currently blocks access from virtual machines, i.e. Shadow. So officially there is no update at this point. Shadow has stated that they have attempted to reach out to Riot Games on multiple occasions to try to implement some kind of workaround. I believe Riot Games has stated in the past that they would be open to partnering with specific cloud gaming and virtual machine providers, so fingers crossed this is still a potential possibility for the future, but for right now, no Valorant on Shadow.
Why don't you like me?
And on that uplifting note, that's all from me this week. So as always, if you enjoyed the video, found it somewhat helpful, a like rating would be appreciated. If you have not already, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on those notifications. Now more than ever, I'll state again, just be safe out there, guys. And as always, I shall see you in the next one.